Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. If you're joining us here at headquarters, thanks for the cool welcome, and you can be seated. If you're joining us online, thank you for joining us. We're going to be continuing in our journey through the parenting manual. Remember, it's called the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Parenting Manual, a hands-on approach. We're going to be picking up on page 71 tonight where Chris left off. And I'm going to be on step 4. If you're joining us online, don't forget, you can go ahead and go to the top of the page on the Facebook page. It has a drop-down menu where you can download the manual. They have all the different manuals we've already gone through. And we're kind of going through this parenting manual pretty rapidly. We're getting pretty close to the finish of this manual. So, but anyway, the parenting manual's up there. Go ahead and download it and join us as we pick up on step 4 where Chris left off again. Let's see. That would be on lesson plan 9, page 9A. And remember, the name of the lesson is Teaching Children Responsibility. Teaching Children Responsibility. And if we learned on the top of the page, Chris went over the purpose objective, which we're going to learn techniques to help teach our children how to be responsible. And then hopefully at the same time we're doing that, we'll be teaching ourselves. Right? Step 4 says, allot time for students to independently read the section Teaching Responsibility on pages 71 to 72 and answer the question to each scenario on page 72 and 73, which we'll be doing tonight. Discuss scenarios and answers as a class, which we won't be doing. I mean, we won't at least be conversing back and forth, but we will discuss that. We'll stress the importance of maintaining self-control to make responsible choices. And remember, you know, I believe David, in his classes, he went over this, you know, that you wouldn't read these steps to your students if you're teaching a class. You know, these are instructions for the teacher. But when it says things like stress the importance of maintaining self-control to make responsible choices, you know, that we need to follow those directions and make sure that we are really emphasizing and highlighting those points and make sure the students understand those things as well. Here you go, Michael. Okay, so let's go over to page 71. And I want to just before I think Chris left off on the bottom about teaching responsibility, but I want to do a little bit of a review and add a few points of my own. Regarding responsibility and what is it in the middle of the page 71. So let's go ahead and put up the first visual for everybody at home, because there's something we really need to key in on what Chris had brought out in the last class. But where it says responsibility, what is it? It says, just like any other positive character trait, responsibility must be developed over time. Notice. And you should really underline that. There's a reason why. First of all, yeah, it's something that, you know, it takes. Responsibility isn't a one-time thing. You know, you don't just make a responsible choice and say, okay, I'm responsible now. You know, it's a series of choices over time. And sometimes along the way, we're going to make irresponsible choices, right? And, you know, here and there. We can't really say we're a responsible person if one day we're making irresponsible choices and the next day we're making responsible choices. We have to remember the recipe. Part of the recipe is consistency. You know, in other words, consistency meaning you're doing it as a habit, the pattern is you normally do it, okay? Doesn't mean sometimes you're going to make mistakes. And remember the difference between a mistake and a choice? I hope. because sometimes I hear people still don't understand that the difference between a mistake, because they keep calling their choices mistakes. You know, I made a mistake, but really, if you think about it, was it a mistake? Because a mistake, remember the example we give of, you know, using too much, the recipe calls for 2 cups of salt and you accidentally put in 2 cups of, or the recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar and you accidentally put in 2 cups of salt in the mix. Well, you're going to taste it, you know, right away. You're going to be like, oh man, I got it mixed up. That's a mistake, you know, but not having sex outside of marriage. Having sex outside of marriage is not a mistake. Okay, I've heard a lot of boys and girls call it a mistake. I made a mistake and I got that girl pregnant. Well, that wasn't a mistake, you know. That was a series of bad choices. Okay, and but in which both parties are responsible, you know. But we can't call it mistakes. There's no children that are running around on Earth right now that are a mistake. but some of them could have been spawned from a bad choice. Okay, but does that mean that we should abandon the child because they were made in a situation? Man, I know plenty of people that kind of got off on the wrong foot, but their children are awesome children, you know? So you can't discard the child. You can't discard the parents. Remember, we're all learning. We're all growing, right? Okay, so let me get back onto that slide because I want you to underline responsibility has to be developed over time. Now, before I read the rest of that page, go to the next slide because I want to show you something. Time itself is not going to help you develop responsibility. Okay? Time itself, you know how some people say, well, give it time, you know, let them learn or let them grow, you know, it just takes time. They'll become responsible over time. No, they won't. No, they won't. They'll end up like this couch potato right here. If you neglect to teach responsibility and you just think that time's going to cure it, nope, sorry. You're sadly mistaken. You have work to do. It's that 4-letter word that no one likes. Work. W-O-R-K, work. It takes effort. It takes a lot of excruciating effort. It takes a lot of painful effort to raise a child. It's not that simple. Okay, but it's the reward in the end is great. It's great. The results that you'll see if you're persistent in the bending and pruning and training of that child, you'll be very glad you took the time to do so. But time itself, write that next to that sentence that I just showed you. Time itself does not cure your child of being irresponsible, or you. You can't think, well, when they're 30 or 40, they'll finally get it. You know how I know time doesn't cure? Have you seen where they moved the doomsday clock recently? Now, they've had that clock for, you know, since 1947. What's that, 70 years now? 72 years, something like that? Or, wait, my math's off. 78 years, something like that. It's getting closer to midnight, but has that 78 years or so made a difference in mankind's responsible choices regarding nuclear arms? No, it hasn't. They're still building them, and they're still building a lot more of them, and they're still getting ready to use them. So time hasn't cured anything. The only thing that's going to cure irresponsibility is the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, diligent training and moral character. You gotta teach moral character if you want results. They're not just going to come out magically. Okay, that's the key. So let's put that slide back up, and let's go back to the original slide so I can continue reading there. It says, being responsible means you're someone others can count on to fulfill your duties and obligations, but most of all, you can count on yourself to make choices that are positive and supportive of your moral character development. Remember, it starts with us. Now, that doesn't sound like something you want to doesn't that sound like something you want to instill in your children? I don't think there's really a parent out there that doesn't want to instill it, but they don't necessarily want to do the work that comes with promoting that kind of growth in their child. Okay, and possibly it's because they just don't have the information. Okay, like we can't blame parents if they have never been taught responsibility themselves. Remember, we have a whole manual we went over. Remember that responsibility unit, the last unit in the character series. I mean, in the junior high series. Y'all remember that? There was a whole book on responsibility, but you had to start with character, and then you had to go to acceptance. Then you had to go to self-control. Then you had to go to respect. Then you came to responsibility. It wasn't that you were procrastinating or anything. It's just that you had to get, a lot of other information to get a foundation to understand what responsibility actually is, right? So it's not something that you can just tell a child, it's like the Yisrael Hawkins, the author of the program, said, you cannot just tell a child, do not bully, don't be a bully. You can't just tell them that. I mean, that's a great message, but you got to have a teaching behind it. You got to show them how, to control their thoughts, to control their feelings, to control their actions. You got to show them all the mechanisms so they can learn not to be a bully and learn the value of treating others with kindness, care, and consideration. Okay, so back to the reading here. It says, responsibility is developed through everyday tasks, interactions, and experiences. And notice, a lot of times when we think of the word responsibility, we think of doing the dishes. Like if you go online and you Google or you Bing one of those, just put in the word responsibility, a child being responsible, and you're looking for a picture of a child doing something. They always show a child vacuuming or mopping or sweeping or, something like that, making their bed. But it's really nothing about interactions with others. Because you have to be a responsible person to make responsible decisions in your interactions and communication with others as well. It takes responsibility. It takes self-control, but it takes responsibility to be able to communicate with people properly, to convey the message appropriately, and try to work out and solve problems with people. It takes responsibility to do that. It's not just doing chores. A lot of times we just think of physical labor when we think of responsibility, like going to work or something like that. But here it shows us interactions and experiences. It's developed through all these things, through tasks like jobs, different assignments you're given, interactions with other people, and experiences that we go through. It says some tasks can seem tedious and boring. Just try to get your child to consistently keep his bedroom clean or take out the garbage without constant reminders. You ever tried that? No, you got to continually remind, hey, did you take the garbage out today? And you usually can tell if there's flies buzzing around or, there's some kind of stench, whether they took it out. It says teaching responsibility in this day and age is very challenging because society promotes entertainment. Can we go back to that slide of the boy laying on the couch? This is a very real deal here. You see how relaxed that boy looks? Does he look like he has much responsibility? Look at all of his gadgets. He's got a nice big soda there, he's got his feet propped up, no shoes on. He's not ready for any action, he just wants to lay around. Because his parents thought that time would cure it, just give him some time. They're just young. Let them be boys. They'll learn to be responsible. You don't have to do anything to teach them responsibility. Like Chris was saying, well, that's child labor if I ask them to do dishes, Or, really? Your child is going to grow up really quick, and they're going to want to probably start a house of their own. And like Chris said, they might get a big surprise when they get married and they find out their wife's never done dishes or doesn't even know how to use a vacuum. And she's like, well, honey, I thought that you were going to be cleaning the house. You're the man. You're supposed to take care of me. And if you don't know how to cook, you don't know how to clean, you don't know how to do things on your own, you're going to be in big trouble. You'll find out if you get married, your wife's not doing all the cooking all the time. Okay? You're going to be doing a lot of your own. So unless you only know how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and heat up soup, you're going to be in big trouble. So you need to learn how to do these things when you're young, because it's training you to get ready to start a family of your own, to leave the nest, as Catan calls it. Like that young bird wants to always leave the nest, but sometimes they're not ready yet. But when they're ready, they're only ready through training. You got to be trained. Okay, so let's go to, it says, teaching responsibility is very challenging because society promotes entertainment rather than family values, positive work ethic, honesty, and service to others. Now, I will say this, that I spent, 16 years in Laredo, Texas, living in that neck of the woods, in that culture, and I saw some very dependable people. I mean, I was very amazed. In some societies, they actually still do teach a work ethic, and we're gonna talk about work ethic tonight as well. But recently, I had to go to Laredo to do some work, and the reverse went out on a vehicle that I was driving, and somebody saw me struggling to get that thing backed up. I was in a parking lot, and I was on kind of an incline where I couldn't, just do what Fred Flintstone does, put my foot out and try to push it back. I mean, it was impossible. And anyway, before I even had an opportunity to look around to see if, I could find somebody was already there, a young man, a very young man. He's like, "You need help?" Just ready and willing to help, right? And help me get it backed up. And I just looked at him like, "Hey, thanks." He's like, "Oh no, I saw you over there, and I ran over here." I mean, the guy went out of his way. He was just a young boy. He was only about 17 or 18 years old. So there's still people that have that in them, that have been trained to be helpful, to want to work, to have a great work ethic like that. And there is a lot of people that are out there that teach their children this kind of responsibility. But there's a big battle, because like Chris was talking about, this entertainment, man, these gadgets that that suck up your time. You can go on Facebook, where they got the scrolling now, and the TikTok or whatever, and just waste hours watching these things. It's addictive. So parents are up against a big challenge when it comes to teaching responsibility. When it comes to getting their child off their duff to take out the trash or do their homework or whatever, it's very hard. So let's continue on page 71 here. And remember it, service to others, that last part right there, service to others. That's what that young man was giving me. He was serving me. He was helping me, And that's just hard to find nowadays with young people in some cultures. Some people just look at you like, "Hey, that's your problem." Like I'm busy doing my own thing. Okay, so let's look on the bottom of page 71. Let's go to the next visual. I like making these visuals for people that are online, because sometimes I know it's difficult to juggle the book online and things, so I like to make these for reading purposes. But let's learn about teaching responsibility now. It says, build the positive character trait of responsibility by establishing and maintaining routine in your child's life. Routine. Build, it says. Notice the word build? That goes along with the word develop. It's like developing a muscle, and, like your arm muscles. You see my big muscle right here? You see that? No. When I was a teenager, I had pretty big muscles. People were like, "Dang, dude, how'd you get such big arms, man?" I mean, I had really, really big arms. I don't know how I got them. I think it was just genetic. because I didn't really lift weights. I didn't do anything, but I had pretty big arms. Still do, right? And but most people have to develop big arms or muscles in their legs or their arms by consistently, like doing something to develop them, like lifting weights and stuff, or running, or whatever they do or doing squats, or whatever they do to strengthen those muscles, to build those muscles up. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to character traits, positive character traits. It takes practice. It takes effort. It takes us actually trying it and putting it into action. Like, for instance, sometimes we don't want to get up at 5:30 in the morning, right? Now, that's really my goal, is to get up at 5:30. Lately, I haven't been doing so well, and I don't know what it is, but my goal is always to get up at 5:30 in the morning. Now, sometimes I don't want to get out of bed, but what's the responsible choice? Like, what would be the responsible choice? Well, it would be to put my own feelings aside, my own wants aside, because I really need to get up. I really do need to get up, because I need to get my day started bright and early. I don't need to be laying in bed just, looking at my phone or whatever else, just wasting time. There's no time to waste, I don't have any time to waste. I have a lot of things I need to do, and I always need to be up early preparing. So, all of us would sometimes just like to keep hitting that snooze button, but the responsible thing to do is to get up and put our feelings aside and do what we know we need to do. And that's that effort we need to make. And it starts with your thoughts, right? It starts with your thoughts. Everything starts with a thought. Because when you wake up, you think, man, I sure am tired. I sure don't feel like getting up. But there's people counting on us to get up. You know that, right? If you're serving other people, you're doing a job and you're serving people, they're counting on you to be on time. They're counting on you to be at work at the proper time, because people are counting on them as well. And as you know, in any job, an office or a workplace, everyone's counting on each other. It's like a machine. If one cog of the machine is missing, everything's thrown off. So everyone's counting. They're interdependent. Remember, we learned about interdependency. None of us are independent of one another. We all need each other for one way, shape, or form. I don't know about you, but I need that barber, I need a barber, because I don't know how to cut my own hair. I could cut my own hair, but you know what? It's going to look really bad in the back, because I can't really do much in the back. And it's going to eventually look like I got a bowl on my head here. It's not going to look great, So I could cut it. Yeah, I could cut it, but it wouldn't look great. And people would probably be thinking, man, dude, you need a barber, So I'm glad we have a barber. I'm glad we have people to do all these different jobs. But remember that people are counting on you. They're counting on you. They're counting on you. So you might not feel like getting up, but other people want you to get up. Okay, they want you to get up. They want you because they need you to do your job so you can be there when they need you. That's just part of responsibility. So remember that when you're laying there and thinking, I don't want to get up. Remember other people are counting on you too. It says, back on the reading, build the positive character trait of responsibility by establishing and maintaining routine in your child's life. It's been proven that we function best when we establish routines in our life. When we have a routine. Now, does that mean that you have to have like one of those, like, what do they call those, daily planners on the wall, or, some kind of chalkboard somewhere where you got everything written down? Well, here's what I'm going to do today. No. You do it through consistent practice. Remember I told you my dad, he's the best example that I know of routine. My dad was all about routine, man. I don't know who instilled that in him. I don't know if he went into the military or something, or, because sometimes military instills that in people. Getting up early, making your bed, having a routine, because everything in the military is like clockwork as well, you know. And I don't know how he got that. I never really asked him, but I just know that everything in our house was done at a certain time every day. There was a certain time to get up. We had our clothes ready at the foot of the bed for school the next day. We had so we could just get out of bed, get dressed, get ready. You know, you went to school, you got home, you know, there was a routine when you got home. You had some chores to do. You had, you know, a little bit of time for free time of doing what you wanted to do. And then there was usually a little bit of there was supper time. And then there was, you know, a little free time, and then there was bedtime. Everything was routine. There was a shower time, everything. Everything went by a routine in my house. And I liked that because I knew what to expect. It wasn't like one day they were doing one thing, the next day, and I'm like, man, why are we doing this one day, and the next day we're doing something? That's confusing, and it's actually very frustrating. But when a child has a routine and they know what's expected of them, does that, you know, and at first, you know, when you're training a child or you're teaching them about a routine, they might not necessarily like some of the things you have on your agenda, right? Like study, reading. Because reading in this day and age, most of their reading is done where? You know, it's done on one of them silly devices, right? Which actually stunts your ability to read. You do know that, right? When you read one of those screens on a phone or a computer, you're actually hurting your eyes. I can tell you, I'm a testimony to it. My eyes are horrible now because of screens, because I spend a lot of time in front of a screen doing my job. But children don't really need a screen. What do they need a screen for? You know, parents give them these phones, these gadgets, and they sit there all day looking at that thing. And it actually harms their ability to be able to focus for any amount of time on anything, okay? And now children and parents, they're adults, they just they can't focus for more than 5 or 6 seconds on anything. And it shows. It shows in their ability you can be talking to them, and they lose interest in about 2 or 3 seconds. You know, they're like looking somewhere else, and they're not really even looking at you because they can't really focus on anything because these devices have caused, you know, this problem with their brain. Okay, so let's put up the slide. I think I had let's put that slide back up. Okay, so it says build the positive character trait. It says by establishing a routine, and I have that underlined because it's something you need to develop. And Catan talked about that word develop, about how it means to build, and how, you know, like I don't know if you've ever seen like a development that the builders build. You know, they build these big neighborhoods. They call them developments, where, you know, they start out with a couple houses and they keep building houses, and pretty soon you got this mini city of houses, you know, in a what they call a development. Well, it's because they're building on it, and they're making it better, and they're making it bigger, and they're helping it grow. Okay, it says, it has been proven that we function best when we establish routine in our lives. This holds true for children as well. Children like to know what's expected of them. They don't operate at their best if they're not sure what will occur next. For example, one day they might get up at 7 a.m., having 50 minutes to get ready for school, and the next day at 7:45 a.m. with only 5 minutes to get to school on time. Now, what do you think is going to be the difference between having 50 minutes and having 5 minutes? Are they going to be calm, cool, and collected as they're getting ready? Is everything going to go smooth at home and everyone's going to be polite to one another? No. Hair's going to be frazzled, you know. I remember there was a picture, I think, in the responsibility unit of the boy that was late for school. I guess his alarm went off late, or he probably hit the snooze button, and he realized, man, I got to get on the bus. The bus is going to be here in 5 minutes. The boy's hair was all frazzled. He hadn't even had time to wet it down and comb it. He had to grab all his stuff. He was all frustrated. He was probably yelling at mom, yelling at the cat, because he didn't get up on time because he only had 5 minutes. But if he had 50 minutes and he had more time to get ready, right, he'd be a lot less frustrated. And I think it said something about the life of a person that doesn't, plan their day out well or whatever, or irresponsible person. Okay, let's put that slide back up. Okay, it says, maintain a steady schedule of activities and plan to stick to it as much as possible. Of course, always be prepared to handle the curveballs that come your way to derail you from your routine. But then get right back on schedule. Okay, now this is the hard part, because if you don't really get right, and you can leave that slide up, by the way. I had that picture down in the corner. No. Go back to the slide I was on. There you go. Back to the slide I was on with the curveball. There you go. That picture down in the corner, that ball was supposed to curve. I guess we don't have the animation on ours, but on this particular device. But a curveball and pitfall. You remember what we learned in the responsibility unit about curveball? I think it was responsibility. Sometimes things don't go the way we want. Our routine gets messed up. Okay, well, how do we handle that? Well, we're gonna go over a couple scenarios tonight to kind of see how we should react when things don't go our way or our routine gets broken. But what I was going to say about that, where it says, even if you get derailed from your normal routine that you've set in your house with your children, if you get off of it, get back on track as quickly as possible. Because if you don't, it's really easy to fall back into laziness and not having a routine. I'm really having struggle getting up in the morning right now for some reason. I never had this struggle before, and I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure it out. But sometimes I just don't want to get up. Like I'm just don't want to get up. I just feel tired, like I haven't been rested. And I do wake up frequently at night. I mean, for some reason I do. I might not be getting the deep REM type sleep you're supposed to get to feel rested enough. But nonetheless, I've been struggling. So the more I don't get up at 5:30, the easier it is not to get up till 6:30, right? Or even 6:45. And then next thing you know, 6:45 turns into 7. So what do you think you got to do? I'll be straight up with you. I used to wet the bed when I was young. I used to wet the bed. Okay, I had a bedwetting problem. And I don't know why I wet the bed, but sometimes I do know why. I think I got so used to wetting the bed that I just felt like, you know what? I might as well just wet my pants because, I don't really feel like getting up. I guess that's probably what I was thinking or something. It's at some times, right? Or sometimes I felt I was dreaming I was in a swimming pool and I woke up like, oh. And I actually was in a swimming pool. But what I'm trying to show you is how easy it is to fall into a pattern and get stuck in it. And if you don't quickly get out of it, it gets worse and worse and worse. Okay? So what this is telling us is don't allow yourself that slack. Quickly get back. Quickly fix it. Quickly do it. And sometimes it takes a lot of effort. You really got to push yourself. You might have somebody call you in the morning, and say, hey, are you up? I tried that. I had somebody in the Peaceful Solution calling me every morning like, hey, are you up? And I'm like, yeah, as I'm laying there. He couldn't see me, so all I had to tell him was, yeah, I'm up. But what I meant was I'm up because you just woke me up, but I'm not up out of bed, right? So I'm using that as an example, but whatever you're falling short in, whatever your routine is that you normally do, that you normally did, and you've fallen off the course. I think Catan recently showed us how easy it is when you're on a course, when you're on a road, to get distracted, to get pulled off course, to get lured off, or even allowing your own mind to take you off course, to make you think that, it's okay, I don't really need to get up till 6:45. Who's going to know and how's, well, you know what? People will know. They're going to be able to tell in some way, shape, or form, and there's going to be a consequence if we don't follow the same routine that we've set. There's going to be consequences, and other people can see it. It's not like something you can hide. Possibly you're late to work every day, right? That's something that people can see. Hey, there's some kind of problem, right? And but that's just one example. All right, so let's continue in the reading. So get right back on schedule, it says, okay? All right, so let's go to page 72. Let's see, get right back on schedule. Oh, we are on 72. Okay, yeah, sorry. On the slide, it went from 71 to 72 without you being able to see that. So, yeah, we're on page 72, in case you're wondering. We're at the second paragraph there on page 72. So let's go to the next slide, which will show that. It says, life is full of surprises. How well do you handle situations that throw you off schedule? Do you become frustrated, impatient, demanding, angry, or start yelling? Or do you remember the positive character traits of patience and self-control? I got a question for you. How easy is it sometimes to forget what you're learning right now? It's pretty, like when you're in class, it all comes back to you. You're kind of like, yeah, okay, I remember that, yeah. But when you're actually in the middle of something, right? When you're in the middle of a situation, how easy it is for you to remember everything that you've learned here. When you're in the heat of something. Is it always that simple? I don't see any reactions, so I don't know if you're thinking, yeah, it's not, or I don't see no reactions. You got to actually have a reaction. You guys know how to react? Yes. No. Michael? So it's not easy, is it? Oh, I got a reaction. Nice. Okay. It's not easy. No, it's not. Nobody said it's easy either, but it's very well worth it when you are persistent and you keep training at it and you start getting it right. Okay, so it says, how well do you do? Do you become frustrated, impatient, demanding, angry, or start yelling? Or do you remember the positive character traits of patience and self-control? Read the following scenarios and circle the best answer as you consider where you can make improvements in your own life. So these scenarios are for us to read and look at the guy next to us and figure out if he's doing this or not. Is that what it told us to do? No? Okay, no. Somebody said no. That's right. It said consider yourself when you're reading the scenario, not the neighbor. Okay? It says, so let's look at scenario one. Let's go to that scenario on the slides. I think I have it in a slide here. Okay. So scenario one says it's 7:35 a.m. Remember, ow! I just got stung. Sorry. Ow. Did you see that thing? It's called a wasp. Ow, that feels like a hammer hit my hand. Okay, let me try to get through this. That's called a curveball. Okay? That's called a curveball, and that was a hard curveball because those things sting hard. I don't know if you've ever been stung by a wasp. Okay, hopefully he's gone. Michael, is he gone? Oh, Michael's gone. No wonder. Okay, so it's 7:35 a.m. You and your 3 children should be in the car backing out of the driveway. Your oldest completed his book report that's due today and can't find it. Your middle child's putting the dog on his leash to take for a quick walk, and your youngest needs help putting on her shoes. So what could you do? What could you do? A, start yelling and screaming for everyone to get in the car quick. B, remain calm and patiently continue to help your youngest put on her shoes while directing your oldest child to various places he may have left his report, and remind the middle child that it's not the time to walk the dog and put him in the backyard. Put him in the backyard. Or C, scream, "You always make me late!" Grab your youngest roughly and tell her that she'll never learn how to put her own shoes on and that she always makes you late. Then tell your oldest that he probably will get a low grade on his report anyway, so just don't bother finding it, and threaten to get rid of his dog. Ow. Michael, you missed great action here, man. Ooh, you heard. Okay. Oh, man. Okay. So what do you think, which A, B, or C? Who said C? Am I hearing wrong? B, like that, whatever just stung me, right? I don't think it was a bee, I think it was a wasp. Okay, yes, B is correct. Number 2, you had a long day at work, the workload is piled up and overdue. When the family comes home, everyone needs your attention. Supper's late and everyone has homework they need help with. What could you do? A, tell everyone to fend for themselves, you quit. B, take a few minutes to plan out with the family how everyone can pitch in to get chores done before supper, fix something that's simple and quick for supper, and then afterward assist with homework. Or C, tune everyone out, sit on the couch and start watching TV. So which one do you think? B? Okay, B. All right, B. C. All right, number 3. Today is the day your family planned a special activity. Oh, you haven't changed the slide. That was number 2 right there. We're on number 3 now. Another pitfall or curveball. All right, number 3. Sorry about that. I should have told you, hey, change the slide. You're not a mind reader. Okay, so number 3, it says, today is the day your family planned a special activity. You wake up your youngest to find out he has a fever. Everyone's disappointed. On top of that, you find out the bathroom toilet's backing up and spilling all over the floor. What could you do? A, call your spouse and start complaining about how rotten your day's going, and could he come home and fix the toilet and watch the sick child so the rest of the family can do their special activity? B, remain calm, turn off the water to the toilet, mop up the mess, and then sit the family down to explain that because the youngest is sick, there will be a slight change in plans. Or C, allow the sick child to do the special activity with the rest of the family and let the toilet continue to back up. What was that? B. And every time you say B, it just reminds me of that. Whatever that was. Oh yeah, B. Okay, so let's go to the next slide because it has the answer for all these questions. It says, if you chose B answers for each scenario, you would have practiced self-control to make responsible choices. Remember to make responsible choices when life throws you a curveball. We need to remain calm to make the best choice for all involved, right? We need to remain calm to make the best choice for all involved. Now, that's not always an easy thing. People that know me know that I'm always calm about everything. Sometimes I get, like when I first hear about something that kind of aggravates me or frustrates me, I might show that in that my voice kind of goes up a little bit and I might sound a little bit irritated. But once I think about it and once I, kind of, as a little bit of time goes by, I tend to calm down. I just tend to think, oh, and I get more information. Usually, sometimes more information even helps me put the situation in perspective where I don't make a mountain out of a molehill. And what I'm learning is a lot of times you need to get all the information before you even react to a situation, because a lot of times you're not even being told everything you need to know yet, right? You're only getting a partial part of the information and you're already flying off the handle, and then you find out later that, well, that wasn't even like half of what you needed to know. So really, education is key. If you don't think education is key, I got a confession to make, right? I'm going to make it right here in front of all of you, because I feel like, I'm amongst friends, and I know that you're all trustworthy. You're not going to tell on me. Can you show this picture on the monitor? I'm addicted to something. I'm addicted to Mary Jane. I'm addicted to Mary Jane. I don't know if you guys know what Mary Jane is. It's this candy. I'm addicted to it. It's molasses and peanut butter. It's so yummy. Now, if I hadn't have shown you what that Mary Jane was, what would you have thought? Sorry? Yeah, you would all thought I was smoking marijuana, that I was making a confession to being a drug addict. That's why education is key. Because sometimes we jump to conclusions about things without getting all the information, and we make an ass out of ourselves, to put it bluntly, right? And I do that quite frequently. So I'm trying to learn to, to get more information before I even react to situations, because a lot of times it's not what it appears, right? It's not what it appears. You can't judge by what you hear, and you can't judge by what you see. You got to get all the information before you make decisions about things. Because remember, some of the examples of it, jumping to conclusions in education would be like, you see somebody on TV and they got handcuffs on and they're getting put in a police car, and the newscaster's telling you that they were arrested at the border with marijuana in the back of their car. Well, what are you going to think when you see that person with handcuffs on and they're being put in the squad car? Yeah, you're going to think he did something. You must have done something to deserve that. They don't just arrest people, right? So you're going to judge based on what you see a lot of times. And you can't do that, because how do you know that that person's guilty of anything? Were you there? Did you see anything? How do you know it's not AI generated? How do you know now that what you're seeing is even real? Unless you have a trained eye for AI type. And what I do, I can kind of tell when I see something that's AI. I see a lot of it. I see so much of it now. There's this stupid thing they got going on Facebook, where they got these like Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney, like these singers from way back in the 60s. I guess they're aging, and people are, they got a young generation learning who they are or whatever, but they got these AI generated images of Paul McCartney at the hospital with some old guy, and he's hugging him, and the old man is laying in the bed, and it's trying to make it look like, he's a humanitarian, like he really cares about people. They're doing this. They had today, I saw, it was Bob Dylan, the singer Bob Dylan, he was at a animal shelter rescuing a puppy, and he was looking at the puppy, and he was holding the puppy, and he had this real serious look on his face. And it was AI generated. It's like, what are they trying to prove by that? Like that he cares about animals, or what are they trying to prove? But why did they do stuff like that? Why did they put AI generated images of people doing things that they're not even really doing and they don't even know about, right? So how do you know they won't come up with an AI generated picture of you doing something or saying something? Because you know that they can make you say things too, right? They can make it look like your mouth is moving and that you're saying a certain thing that you're not even saying. You know they can do that, right? So anymore, I don't know what's real, but sometimes I can tell, sometimes I can, sometimes I get fooled. They have these, I don't know if you've seen these animal Olympics where they have horses and cats and every kind of animal you can think of, pigs, antelope, whatever, and they're diving on diving boards, like in an Olympic swimming pool. They're jumping on the diving board, and then they're landing in the water, and it looks real. It looks like, and they're doing backflips, these are animals doing it, real animals. And it looks so real, it's unbelievable. Like even the splash of the water and their body under the water as they go under. And I'm like, man, if they can do that and make that look that real, what else can they do? So, moral of the story is you can't judge by sight. You can't judge by what you hear. You got to get all the information, okay? And remember, don't be spreading that I'm addicted to that green stuff. I told you it was this. Let me just clear it up again. Mary Jane, it's candy, molasses and peanut butter. Very delicious. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. Okay, so if you chose B answers in all those scenarios, you would have practiced self-control to make responsible choices. Remember, to make responsible choices when life throws you a curveball, we need to remain calm to make the best choice for all involved. Okay, so let's go now to the next visual, and we're on page 73. Let me make sure I'm not supposed to read something. Okay, 73, 74. Okay, yeah. 73, 70. Okay. Yeah, let's go to step 5. Let's go to lesson plan 9, page 9A in the purpose objective page. It says, have volunteers read the section, what does work ethic mean? On pages 73, 74, and discuss how drastically society has changed in the past 50 years concerning work ethics. Children used to be expected to help with household chores. It was part of being a family unit. As a class, brainstorm different life skills parents could teach their children. And man, that is so true. When I was growing up, we used to all have chores. We used to always have chores. And sometimes those chores rotated, like we would do chores. We would take out the trash one week. Other week we might help with laundry. Other week we might do, this or that. But we always had chores, and it was just like normal. That was a normal thing. And guess what? I didn't expect my parents to pay me anything. It was like there was no thought of getting paid. Now, we did have what we called allowance. My parents did give us an allowance every week. They gave us $5 a week. And in 1970, 1969, 1970, that was a lot of money. Now I look back on it, because with that $5, I could go to the movie. That was back when I didn't know any better. I could go see a movie, a matinee. I could get popcorn. I could get, what were those things? Good and Plenty. Those little candies, a box of those, Good and Plenty. I could get a Coke. And I could probably get a couple other items that I wanted at the concession stand at that movie theater for $5. Easily. That was a lot of money back then. I didn't realize it. I thought only $5, but it was a lot of money back then. I could go to the candy store in 1969, 1970 with $1 and get a lot of stuff. But we did get an allowance. But we didn't tell our parents, you have to give us an allowance or we're not going to do our chores. We never even thought about something like that. We never even thought we were getting paid for doing chores. We just thought we got an allowance, So Anyway, let's look at page 73, and let's talk a little bit about work. What does work ethic mean in the waning minutes that we have left in this class? So it says, don't let the word work scare you. It's an essential part of everyday life. You may not have thought about it, but children must be taught how to work. They must. You see that word must? You know what must means? I used to be a paralegal. Must in law means anytime you see the word will or must means it's mandatory. It has to be done. No ifs, ands, or buts. No questions. It has to be done. So when you see this word must, could you underline that word must? Underline that word must. Because it leaves no wiggle room. There's no wiggle room. If you want to be a responsible parent, a responsible teacher even, or a guardian of a child, and you're not teaching them to do chores and to do work, some kind of work, to maintain their house or maintain their classroom or whatever environment that you're watching over, you're failing at being responsible as an adult. And you're failing that child because you're not teaching that child responsibility in that area, at least. So it says they must be taught how to work. As always in the role of a parent, your example will be most powerful teaching tool in this area. And you can think of it like this. Let's say your classroom, there's stuff scattered all over. There's things under, on the floor. Children aren't putting things in the trash can, whatever. Right? Well, instead of yelling at everybody and saying, hey, get over there and pick that up. Or, hey, why'd you leave that laying on that table or whatever? Why don't you go over, right, as the teacher and pick up that wrapper off the floor and say, these wrappers, they don't belong on the ground. There's a trash can right over here. Isn't it amazing how you got 20 trash cans in a classroom, but there's snot rags laying everywhere? Like they're over here on a desk. You got one on a ledge. There's a couple on the floor. And it's like the trash can's like right there. Right? Well, that's just kind of the way it is with children unless you teach them to put that, to guard other people's safety and health, and put that snot rag in the trash can where it belongs. Or in their pocket, folded up or whatever, but it shouldn't be out laying there where somebody else can get sick. And if you're not teaching that, you're not practicing positive moral character. That's actually immoral. You know that, right? That's part of immorality. I was reading an article earlier today where a man said, when you don't give proper information to people, that's immoral. It's immoral when you withhold information from people that you need to give that person, that you should be giving that person. It's immoral. It's immoral to make them think a certain thing that's not true, or withhold facts from them that they need to know to make a decision. It's immoral. Now, we don't think of it as immoral. We just think, well, they don't need to know everything. But it's actually immoral. It's immoral conduct. It's immoral. That means it's not right. And it's going to have a consequence. So you got to remember, when we don't teach children to throw their trash away, to dispose of their snot rags or whatever it is that could get somebody else sick and infect somebody else, then we're not only are we being immoral, but we're teaching them immorality ourselves by not teaching them, by not holding them accountable to do what they need to do by throwing their trash away. So it says, of course, your child usually doesn't witness what you do when you're away from home at your other job. Your one job is being a parent. Your other job is what you do when you're not at home. It says, think about what you do when you come home from work. Do you come home and sit yourself in front of the TV, eat your supper there, and eventually fall asleep? Or do you continue to model a work ethic, teaching your child different life skills? You know, instead of coming home, vegetating on the couch, telling your wife to get you a beer and getting the remote and sitting there just changing channels, do you do that? Or do you bring your work ethic home and train your children different things that they can learn? There's so many things that you can teach a child. There's so many things that you can do besides sitting there watching a TV. Surely by now, you know, we know that there's other things that you can do to make life enjoyable, not just sitting there looking at some idiot box, right? Surely we know by now life is full of things to do. Okay, but of course, it takes a little thought sometimes, but you'll find so many things out there are so exciting, so wonderful. There's so much learning you could be doing, you know, with your child. But, you know, of course, it takes education, as we're talking about. So anyway, that's probably all I'm going to have time for tonight. We're going to leave off on page 73, right there in the middle in the section, What Does Work Ethic Mean? Our next class, shoot, I had it. Here it is. It's going to be on Wednesday, 9/3/2025 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope you'll join us. Be responsible and be here, okay? Have a great evening.